Okay, well, hello everybody. My name is Cole. I'm with my teammate John here, and this is our football analytics blitz presentation. So our agenda today is we're gonna go over introductions, just kind of figure out what we're working with. Then we're gonna cover coverage deployment, see how often teams use the two high safety, offensive strategy, how we're going to counter it, game plan. We chose the Patriots as our team to model, and we're going to do Patriots against those Vikings, how we're going to do that, and then we're going to go over our play for that game, and then some finishing thoughts. Yeah, so like I said, I'm Cole. I'm a sophomore here at Lehigh. Both me and John are in the Honors Computer Science program here at Lehigh, and we're both interested in data analytics. I'll let John introduce himself.
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Jonathan. I'm also a sophomore here, like Cole said, doing honors computer science and business. I currently hold an internship with the startup IT solutions company, BVA Bears, where my position has a lot to do with data analytics and business development. So this was a great opportunity for us. I also have leadership experience as a baseball coach and as camp counselor.
Perfect. So the first question to ask is when do teams deploy two high safeties? And over here on the left, I have a very simple graphic on what that looks like. It just means that two high safeties line up 10, 15 yards past the line of scrimmage. And what that effectively does is it splits the field in half instead of just having that one safety back there to try and make crazy runs by himself to get to where he needs to be. Um, so we have these introductory stats here. Um, Too high safety and then not too high safety like EPA's league-wide averages. And so just based off of this graphic, it's easy to kind of draw a conclusion here that maybe too high safeties aren't as efficient as the league thinks, but that's not the correct interpretation of this data. The most telling metric here is the run rate percent for each of these. And so people don't like to run against too high safeties, especially because the situations that cause too high safeties are often long yardages. And so it reinforces this fact that we're going to continue to come back on in this slideshow that two high safeties prevent these explosive plays, or they try to, but they sacrifice these little tiny these tiny gains over the middle and in these shallow routes. So that's why the EPA can look a little bit higher because they're going to target less downfield. They're going to target those what's available. Um, so this is
Yeah, I could say
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no problem. Yeah, so we'll look at the first kind of graphics here of the presentation, and we're kind of talking about deployment rate in terms of how many minutes are left when related to the score differential. So when we're within a touchdown, you can notice a spike at the end of quarters as time is winding down, especially inside the final 2 or 3 minutes of the first half. The deployment rate is going to increase. It becomes critical to prevent kind of these big, large, explosive plays. And too high safety is fundamentally a big play prevention. So defenses are going to lean into it in late quarters, especially when the game is getting close. Right. And now, secondly, when the offense is down by 8 or more points, we could see the deployment rate is generally high when the offense is trailing. You don't want to allow the offense to have, a big explosive play to bring the game closer. So preventing that kind of quick strike becomes even more critical when the defense is up by more than a touchdown.
So as we look at offensive alignment influence, the data is very consistent with what we've already said. Bunch and condensed formations, which we have defined as what we aggregated there. Bunch and condensed formations still see strong too high usage because it protects against vertical switches and explosive plays. As to go distance increases, too high rates increase, and especially in clear passing situations. So when there's 10 yards to go and it's third down, we don't have the downs here. We'll discuss that later, but you're going to pass that. And so when defenses know that we're going to pass, they're going to deploy too high rate at a way higher rate than if maybe we run, maybe we pass. The implication is clear. Offensive must be prepared to efficiently and effectively attack two high structures in the pass, especially passing.
Yeah, so before we kind of conclude our findings about deployment rate percentage, it's kind of important to go through the nuances of these stats. First, we see kind of no definitive trend in terms of where the offense is positioned on the field in terms of too high deployment percentage. Obviously, when the offense is, on their own 5-yard line, say, and, the defense is trying to, prevent a big play, there's no really strong linear kind of correlation until you get to the red zone, where a lot of teams will play straight up man and kind of no high safety. Otherwise deployment stays relatively stable across most of the field. And again, when you're in the red zone, there's no really room for safeties to drop back. Whereas on the right, another kind of more nuanced graph is the to go by down table, which kind of reinforces which we've already seen, which is that distance matters more than where the offense is positioned on the field. So as yards to go increase, especially on the early downs, two-high deployment rises. But these are refinements, and they help with situational decision-making, but they're not as predictive as down and distance or the spread of receivers or the formation that the offense comes out of.
So to summarize our
Yeah, so
deployment,
you got
okay.
it. You got it.
All right. To summarize our deployment findings, too high usage is primarily driven by structural offensive factors. The highest influence variables are formation, yards to go, number of receivers, as we saw earlier, and being backed up near your own goal line. These consistently increase the likelihood of too high deployment, except for backed up on own 10, which would it's very rare to come out in too high deployment. Medium influence factors include when offense is trailing by a touchdown or more, third down situations, and late second quarter scenarios. These matter, but not as much as high influence and don't have the same predictability. Low influence variables were broader game context markers like quarter and general field position. Outside of extreme red zone compression or late clock situations, these did not meaningfully shift deployment. And overall, these defenses deploy too high safety most aggressively when spacing and distance increases explosive risk. It is less about the scoreboard alone and more about the structure's stress on the defense. So we're gonna discuss optimal attack strategies. So now that figure that we come out in a spread formation and we're pretty sure this defense is coming in with too high safeties and we can see them, how are we gonna attack that? And so to begin, before evaluating any strategy, it's important we have a baseline of league-wide averages. First down is generally positive. Second down trends a little bit negative, and third down is roughly neutral. All this is meant to do is show that on any given play, we're not expected a whole lot. And so when we're able to get a lot, and when we're able to get something like 0.5 or even something close to 1 point per play, that's pretty important. So it just is meant to reinforce that when we find these findings, how huge of influence they actually have. So now we can compare too high and other variables against this league-wide standard.
Yeah, so league-wide, we see a clear separation in route performance against too high, specifically with posts and crosser routes. They generate the strongest EPA, even among other deep routes like just a basic go, while flats, screens, and comebacks underperform. All right, but in raw averages alone are kind of incomplete because when broken down by specific coverage within too high, performance varies significantly. Certain right spike against certain coverages like cover 4, cover 6, but that's not uniform across kind of all shells, right? The corner route especially suddenly becomes way more efficient against corner 6, which we found interesting. So while these kind of league-wide trends are helpful, the context of the coverages, the context of the routes matters, and especially coverage structure refines the entire story of our data.
Yeah, totally. And to add on top of that, this is sort of bleeding into our part 3 because we know we're going against the Vikings, and the Vikings had a crazy high nickel personnel rate. And it's also true that most too high safeties are very easy to come out with nickel personnel. So it's an important stat to look at EPA against nickel. And all the way, like we see up in the top 6 here, we got single right, spread, bunch left, slot left, trips left, and trips right. And all of those numbers most of the data revolves around zero. But those top five distinguish themselves as effective and prominent against this against nickel personnel too high safety deployment. On top of that, more we're seeing consistently that more receivers means more spacing and more stress on both safeties and clearer leverage for reads for the quarterback. The defense is forced to declare structure, and that tends to improve offensive efficiency. So we can see here another route analysis. The most important thing to recognize here for our play later is the comeback efficiency. Kind of lacking in our recent studies, but when you match it against defenses that do not deploy too high safety, so when there is no not too high safeties, the comeback is not effective. But when you subtract those two and find the difference, comeback is extremely more effective against too high safety deployment. So we'll be utilizing that later. And then, okay, and then this is what I think is the most interesting data to me. So in nickel formation, which is common among two high deployments, we found the EPA for run, pass, and situation for too high versus non too high. And the only EPA in run EPA that was positive was against too high 6 to 10. And that's an important aspect of our game plan because we believe that it's very underutilized to run against a too high safety, especially when the yardage isn't within 5 yards. A lot of teams will play that safe, but I think running inherently is often playing it safe, but it's important to stress the defense and keep them honest while attacking the middle with a running back. And then defines so for this explosive play, run run plays are just more explosive against cover or against too high safeties than they are against not too high safeties. So an important distinction and benefit of running against that deployment.
Oh yeah, and then we can kind of go into our offensive conclusions. As Cole just said, we found it really interesting how underutilized the run was against too high safety, which makes sense because defenses will usually come out into high safety when they're expecting a pass. But we found that it is very effective to run, especially when you're going from 6 to 10 yards to go. And the run rate isn't necessarily higher than the pass, and the middle isn't as busy slightly after the snap. And also for the run influence, you come out in a formation that would force or make the defense assume that it would be a pass, so they come out into high safety, and then you punish them with hopefully an explosive run up the middle.
Yeah, and of course, we're seeing like what John just said, punishing with the middle. Logically, it makes sense to attack the middle. It doesn't take all of this data that we found, these 35,000 rows of plays. That's where there's space. When you come out in two safeties, they have to move to the middle. There's nobody just sitting there. Unless you have a linebacker back deep, they're what's responsible for that 10 to 15 yard range, and they have to get there. So again, keep them honest, get them there, and you're going to be able to punish them. Maybe not every play, but most plays we're seeing that crossers, posts, and even slots comparatively against things that aren't too high, very, very, very effective. Oh, sorry.
No worries. And then, yeah, just kind of finalizing our kind of offensive conclusions. But, spreading the field, coming out in sets where more receivers, whether, it be, trips left or any kind of spread where we can utilize the receivers, you make the defense assume that it's going to be a pass play, especially on where there's 6 to 10 yards to go when you need a first down. And so the defense is more likely to call a too high safety set. And with the correct personnel and game plan, it's easier to punish that formation when you're expecting that.
Perfect. So what our game plan looks like against the Vikings incorporates all this data. Essentially, so like what we just said, we want to force that run matchup. Rushes are extremely efficient against two high safeties. We've just been talking about that. Consistently come out in formations that threaten the outside and then run it. So come out in a spread, come out in a trips left, and run it up the middle. Make them think we're gonna pass, and also we'll talk about attack the middle, but we want to create that threat to create another threat.
And going to attack the middle. As we said, before in our data findings, that post and crosses are a lot more efficient than other deep routes, which we found super interesting and wanted to utilize that when thinking about our play. So between the hashes is the biggest gap in covers for 2, 4, and 6. And when defenses aren't disguising any coverages, it's the most open part of the field, right? And we want to utilize big plays that create a threat. Okay, a couple of completions in that 10 to 15-yard range will make room for a productive run game. So if you're habituating pass plays where you're making a threat between that 10 to 15-yard range, you're going to open up more explosiveness for the run game, whether it be a too high coverage or whatever coverage you can try to implement.
And we want to adapt to adaptations. So obviously, if we're going to keep attacking the middle, they're going to adapt. Brian Flores is a very smart coach. He's going to adapt to that change. And so being able to switch it up, being able to attack the middle and run, switching it up, very important. Combating the adaptation will kind of look like spreading the field with wide alignments and throwing verticals and running outside. So let's say he comes out in too high and it's a disguise coverage. We know that beyond the numbers deep is going to be open, or at least it's going to be a personnel matchup. So we like that option. And then additionally, continuously gaining small yardage will only work for so long. So being ready to throw deep, being ready to not just have a small passing offense, we want to, and with Drake May, our prospective quarterback in this situation, he's able to throw deep. He's able to make those reads, and he's able to read the blitz, and that's the most important part of our game plan. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, and just preparing for the blitz, we recognize that as we continue to spread the field in this game plan, we'll consistently starting to get beat up the blocks. And if the Super Bowl is indicative of that, then that will particularly be true with the Patriots. But we're going to counter that by using slip screens and have the options for short and quick passes that the receivers will also be able to make reads for. And also, according to the blitz behavior that they show throughout the game, we'll be able to adapt our run game, as we kind of mentioned before.
Yeah, so this is our play that we've designed for first down on our 35. As John said, we're gonna really hope for Will Campbell to have a good game, not one that he had in the Super Bowl. And I'm just gonna read through the QB's progression here. So the ball is snapped, and the point of the play is to read from left to right. So first we have this choice on the left. So it's either a hook or a go route streak. And regarding the choice route, the wide receiver chooses the hook unless one of the safeties drops. So as he's running up for that hook, he's checking, is he going to get coverage from that one receiver? Is it or that one safety? Is it a disguise coverage? Is it only one deep safety? So if it is, then he switches to that go route. Now we're attacking that outside the numbers. But that's not the main read. The main read, right? He reads the pressure, sees if it's a blitz. If it's a blitz, we don't want to get 8 sacks, right? We want to throw that to the running back. We want to throw that to that drag route, 2 very quick acting, very quick responding routes that have an insanely large chance to be open. And before we go anywhere else, I forgot to mention the point of the formation here. We're coming out in spread. We're splitting the receivers on each side. We're really trying to spread the field so that middle is open, because our post is our main read here. If the QB has time, if he doesn't have to throw these checkdowns, throw that post. There's a good chance it's open. It's over the middle. But if it's not, we found increased statistical advantage of rolling out right. And so if, this play is still continuing, roll out right and look for that comeback route. Comeback route, as we remember, was uniquely good against too high safety as opposed to not too high safety. So if they are, the Vikings usually are, that comeback route is going to be man coverage if it's in a disguise formation. I mean, it's a man beater. So throw that route if we're running out late. And then if we're able to roll out, that's an easy throw out, 2nd and 10, not a sack. So the main point here is to avoid sacks. Be prepared for that blitz, because we understand the integrity of our line will not be super impressive if, it's a 6-man rush, 7-man rush. That's, we won't have a whole lot of time. We're going to have to throw to that running back. So yeah, so I'll let John discuss why we picked the routes that we did.
Yeah, So just kind of getting into the more specifics of why our routes kind of work. So first, the choice route. It functions as almost an organic program for the quarterback. Right. So the wide receiver can identify the coverage and attack disguised formations of what he recognizes. You know, he'll run the streak if he sees a safety drop, and that'll reinforce, in this case, Drake May's knowledge of the coverage. It'll also detect disguised odd coverage formation by spreading the field beyond the numbers. Both the flat and the drag route are going to attack the blitz. Yeah, we've seen it. We've seen in our findings that those kind of shorter routes allow, I guess, kind of a buffer for quick passes over the middle to counter attack the blitz to get a quick play. As we've seen, the post route or deep routes like that have been the most effective and have been shown to be the most effective in terms of EPA for two high safety coverages. And then, for the comeback route, it's a man coverage beater. Like Cole said, Brian Flores is a very smart coach. Can discuss a lot of things, and this just kind of gives another option, another read for Drake May to kind of go through.
Yeah, and then just some notes that I didn't touch on in the play design. Second best formation against two high safeties from earlier data. Defense will likely come out in nickel. All of these are tested and good against nickel. And as John said, we are expecting at least some disguised formation in a game. Even though it's not common, we are expecting it and we are ready for it, but we don't need it. It doesn't our play doesn't rely on it. But that was our presentation. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening and your time. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, judges, you guys are able to ask any questions you have. There's 3 minutes remaining before the next group gets to come on. So yeah, go ahead if you guys have any questions.
I just want to say, good work, guys. Very good stuff. I wanted to ask if you guys took a look into, I know you looked at formations, but if you guys looked at anything personnel specific, whether that could be a spread. I know you said spread formation. What if it was spread formation with two tight ends versus four receivers? I don't know if you guys looked at that to see if there was any changes with how defenses play that.
So we actually did. So if you remember earlier, we had a graphic for wide receivers. But that was the one that was the most telling. When we had tight ends when we included tight ends in the personnel, there wasn't clear data that indicated either way. The main thing that we did find is, like, obviously if you load up on three tight ends, there's a good chance of running it. And the same data is true for the data that we have here for running is that it works. And so I believe that if we included the kind of like the three tight ends, it probably would have it came off as redundant. At least that was our idea. But we definitely considered it when we were looking at run EPA against too high.
Yeah, I thought, like Jeremy said, it's a great job overall, really thoughtful, made sense the way you guys sort of went about explaining things. I'm curious about what your process was like for drawing up that play in the end. I don't know if you guys have ever drawn up plays before, if you borrowed from playbooks, anything like that, but I definitely understand how you guys used your background research to inform it, but I'm curious what that process was like.
So, the way I got into football is a little bit, I guess, avant-garde. I never watched, I played soccer all growing up, and in high school, one of my best buddies was talking all this crap saying he beat me in fantasy football, and I knew nothing about football. And so me and my pride, I was like, I gotta learn it. So I learned everything through fantasy football, and that led to Madden, and this is all simulation, not really real football. And so the exposure that I got to play calling is, funny little lines on a route. So I actually watched a video about play calling and about the ideas, and then I utilized the information that we got about specific routes, like about specific formations. And I did think about, like, if I was a quarterback, trying to make it as easy as possible for me, trying to make it as easy as possible for the guy behind the line to read. And I think that was the biggest tip that I was given, was that make it left to right, make it be read left to right, so that the quarterback isn't panicking and he has ways out. And so that was kind of my logic. Some of it based in Madden, a lot of it based in real life. But yeah, it was made on Google Drawing. It wasn't made through some program. But yeah.